What's up, guys? Today we got the Pixel 6a versus the A54. These are two very popular mid-range phones, so let's go ahead and compare them. Alright, so the 6a you can find for $221 used refurbished, and then brand new they're $338. The A54 is relatively new, so it still costs around $400. Alright, so let's go ahead and dive into it with the hardware. This comes down to personal preference. I personally like the way the 6A looks. I just like the design a little bit better. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So it's pretty interesting because you kind of have an inverse here. So the 6A does have a plastic back, but it's also got a aluminum frame on it. So it feels really solid, and at first glance and feel, it almost kind of feels like it has a glass back, but it's not. It's plastic. And you have the opposite on the A54. It's got a glass back and it's got plastic frame on it. So if it was up to me, I personally, since you're not really feeling the back of the phone like that, I like to feel like the metal. I think it gives it a more premium feel. So that's why I say I like the design on here a little bit more. But like I said, the glass back does look pretty nice. It gives it a premium look to it. And it just comes down to personal preference, like I said. And I do like that the 6A, you can't really see smudges and stuff, on this particular color. So I'm sure if you got a lighter color, like a white color on the A54, you won't be able to see that. Also, the size, they're almost the same size. It looks like almost about the same in thickness. And as far as the weight, the A54 just feel a little bit heavier than the 6A for sure. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the displays on these two phones. So the Pixel does have a smaller 6.1 inch display, so it's kind of compact. And you also have a OLED HDR display, and it's 1080p 429 for the PPI. It's a 60 Hz panel. The A54 has a Super AMOLED 120 Hz HDR10 Plus, and then it also is slightly brighter as well too. It's 6.4 inches, so it's slightly bigger. And then you also have 1080p 403 for the PPI. Basically, the A54's display is better across the board. It's got 120 Hertz. It's got the full HDR 10 Plus on it as well. And they're both pretty much look the same as far as resolution wise. But yeah, I just really like the A54 having the high refresh rate basically. Like I said, they're both 1080p panels. They both pretty much have the same PPI, and so they both kind of look the same in terms of sharpness. But it having those two advantages, having the high refresh rate and having the HDR10 Plus that the Pixel does lack. All right, so that's pretty much it. They both kind of have like these have a bit of bezels that you would expect with these mid-range devices here. But yes, the A54 does have the better display. Now, Google does have a new Pixel coming, like I think in a week, the 7A. So it'd be interesting to see what that phone is all about. But yeah, as far as the display, both displays are good, but I think the A54 clearly takes this one. All right, so let's talk about the OS real quick. So we have stock Android on the Pixel, which basically is just pure how Google wants Android to look. So both of these are running Android 13. So basically, with the A54, it's running Samsung's One UI. So you guys know what One UI is. A ton of features, ton of stuff that you can play with, ton of additional features that you can mess around with. And one of the highlights with the Pixel basically is that you get updates very fast. So when the next version of Android comes out, you're the first to get the beta software and all that cool stuff. And One UI, like I said, has a ton of like additional features in here that's super useful. So definitely it just comes down to, I think if you're a little bit more advanced software user, you'll like One UI. But if you like stuff a little bit more clean, very fast updates and stuff like that, you'll like the stock version of Android for sure. Alright, so let's talk about the specs a little bit more here. So with the Pixel, we do have the Google Tensor chip on here, no SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM. With the A54, we have the Exynos 1380. We actually do have SD card support on here, so we do have more storage we can get on the A54. That's definitely a highlight for a lot of people. You have 128 gigs of internal storage on this one, and you also have 6 gigs of RAM. You can see a pretty big score difference here with the two scores, and basically how does that translate? Basically, they're pretty much on par with each other. But like I said, it's really until you start opening a ton of applications. So as you'll see right here, you can see the Pixel is just, it's just much faster. Well, I wouldn't say much faster, but I would say, a little bit noticeably faster. But you really don't feel the difference. You really don't feel the difference until you open up something a little heavier like Subway Surf. And you guys can see the Pixel just kind of, just blows through it with just a stronger CPU power, stronger GPU. You can see I'm already in the game, already playing. So you guys see that difference right there, and it does translate into heavier games like PUBG as well too, where you'll see massive difference here if you're somebody that likes to play games competitively as well. So I think it's kind of like the Pixel definitely wins in the power department. I think over time it's gonna be just a much more faster phone down the line. I think the A54 with Samsung's Exynos chip, I think in 2 years, it's just gonna start lagging all over the place. I would bet as it gets newer versions of Android. So that's why I've always really liked the Pixel phones in general, because I think Google throwing in, this was a processor that they had in their flagship phones. So putting in the mid-range phone is awesome to me. And we can see you're gonna see a big difference with PUBG performance as well too. Alright, so here's the big difference with gaming performance. On the Pixel, we're able to do Smooth Extreme, HDR Ultra are our best settings. And you guys can see it's very consistent. You get nice frame rates here. And the gaming experience isn't really close. So basically the A54, it can only give you Smooth High. And it can only go up to Balance HD. So you see, it's a big difference in terms of gaming. So if you are a gamer, you have a much better experience on the Pixel 6a. You're able to play at 60 frames. You can pretty much tell this is running at a lower frame rate for sure. So yeah, no 60 frames on A54. The Pixel is just more powerful, and you will have better settings across the board when it comes to gaming. All right, so let's check out the stereo speakers. They both have them. Let's go ahead and check them out. Max volume. So Pixel's definitely louder, has better bass. Yeah, in comparison, the A54 is a little bit flatter and not as loud, but still pretty good. But I definitely give it to the Pixel there for the better speaker. Alright, also both these phones have the under the display fingerprint sensor. Unfortunately, they're both optical. So you kind of have to apply a little bit of pressure. They're not as fast as the, ultrasonic ones. But, they get the job done, no problem. So it's not really a big issue. They both have NFC, and they both have an IP rating. They both actually have IP67 dust and water resistant, which is pretty cool. And they both lack any type of wireless charging as well. Let's talk about the cameras, and I'll let you guys see these side-by-side stills. You have a 50 megapixel standard on the main camera on the A54, 12 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro. It shoots in 4K 30 on the front and back. You have a 32 megapixel selfie cam. The Pixel, it does have a 12 megapixel standard, and that is technically a 12.2 megapixel, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide, 4K 60 video, and then you also have an 8 megapixel selfie cam, and then it only shoots in 1080p 30 on the front. All right, so check out the side-by-side stills. Let me know what you guys think. Here's a video on the 6A. Here's our 0.6, 2x. Alright guys, here's the video on the A54 5G here. Shooting at 1080 60. It looks pretty good. Let me know what you guys think. Alright, lastly, let's talk about the battery specs here. So the A54 has a pretty big battery at 5,000 milliamps, and then you also have 25 watt charging. The Pixel does have a 4,410 milliamp battery, and then you also have 18 watt charging. So the Pixel 6a charges very, very slow. They both actually kind of charge slow, but this is significantly slower. The A54 at least is at 25 watts, which again is still kind of slow for 2023. But battery life is still very good on both of these phones. I can get through a full day on both these phones. I think the A54, it feels like I can get a little bit more juice out of this phone. It actually does a really good job with battery life, surprisingly. So yeah, so I think the A54 does have a slight edge in terms of screen on time. But the Pixel 6a has never died on me in a day. I've always been able to get through a full day with this phone. So that's pretty much it, guys. Be sure to let me know what you guys think. Which phone would you guys choose? And I'll catch you guys in the next one.